My lecture today is Black Folks' Guide to Spotting Japanese Buddhist Racism. If you are members of the SGI, Nichiren Shoshu, and Nichiren Shu, it is important that you have Black Buddhist leaders who could guide you in the direction of being a true Bodhisattva in Buddhism and practicing the correct teachings. Because if you are with Nichiren Shoshu, Nichiren Shu, and the SGI, you are not practicing correct Buddhism. Please understand that one who is a social reformer is another name for Bodhisattva of the earth. The Japanese teach a form of institutional racism. The institution of racism started really in the Christian area when a new Buddhism was introduced to the world called Mahayana Buddhism. In our world, or in America, the Constitution is one of the greatest documents ever. But it took a Dr. Martin Luther King, a Malcolm X, and all of the souls who fought for freedom, justice, and equality, who we call the Bodhisattvas of the earth. They are the people who make, and people who are fighting for Black Lives Matter, they are the people that is making America live up to its creeds and the creeds of the Constitution. Now, in Mahayana Buddhism, which most of the Japanese practice, it is a time in history when Buddhism was separated by race, language, and culture. Buddhism emerged from the Harappan culture in ancient India. The Harappan culture was the Indus Valley civilization. This civilization never included what we know as white people. Buddhists were known as Naga people, and who was associated, many of you know, was associated with the snake or the dragon, but the Naga actually are mountain people who actually came from the plains of India, ancient India. Now, the language of Mahayana Buddhism is characterized by Sanskrit. Now, science proves that Sanskrit is an artificial language that has no archaeological, anthropological, or literary evidence to back up Mahayana Buddhism's claim. The ultimate characteristic of Sanskrit is to remove Black language, history, and culture. Now, understand the largest religious writings in the world is the Pali Canon. The Pali Canon is 11 times larger than the Bible. All of the Buddhist teachings are recorded in the Pali Canon. It's recorded in the language called Sanskrit or Pali. They had the Fourth Buddhist Council in 29 BC in Ceylon, or what is known today as Sri Lanka, and they wrote all of the Buddhist teachings down. Now, before Mahayana Buddhism took over and spread it, that was the new Buddhist, or what we call a white Buddhism. The Buddhism was in Pali language. About 200 years after the Fourth Buddhist Council, they had a Sanskrit Buddhist council supported by King Kanashika. This is when they created the new Mahayana Buddhism in the language, whereas the Buddha changed from black to white, and they got rid of the black language written in Pali, and they changed the written word to Sanskrit. While the SGI, Nichiren Shoshu and Nichiren Shu praise and push Sanskrit as sacred and almost godly. The most widely read Buddhist doctrine in the world is the Lotus Sutra, that was translated from Sanskrit to Chinese by Kumara Jiva in 406 AD. There exists no record of a Sanskrit version of the Lotus Sutra earlier than Kumara Jiva's Chinese version. The world does not use Sanskrit's version of the Lotus Sutra. So why is it that the SGI, Nichiren Shoshu, and Nichiren Shu promote Sanskrit? The way to spot or recognize Japanese racism is their attempt to promote or incorporate Sanskrit version of Buddhism. Please note that Buddhism was separated by race, language, and culture. The Pali language is the black history and culture, and Sanskrit is a racist attempt to practice and remove all black history and culture from Buddhist teachings. Please understand that Nichiren Shonin challenged all of the Mahayana Buddhist sects in Japan in his day as erroneous and in error. Nichiren taught that only the Lotus Sutra was the correct teachings of the latter day of the law. The SGI, Nichiren Shoshu, and Nichiren Shu all teach that the word Namu comes from Sanskrit. The Gosho does not say such. In the Gosho, the gifter writes, and it reads, quote, "In worshiping all deities and Buddhas, the word Namu is put ahead of their names." To explain exactly what Namu means, Namu is a word from India. In China and Japan, it is translated as dedicated one's life. Dedicating one's life means to offer one's life to the Buddha. The Japanese sects attempt to rewrite history by connecting Buddhists with Sanskrit by defining the word Namu as a Sanskrit word. The word Namo is a Pali word used in chanting. Namu comes from Namo, and it is a Pali word, not a Sanskrit word. We challenge the Japanese Nichiren sects on this fact. The first writings is Pali canon. The way these sects keep Buddhism white is to extricate black history via naming Pali word Sanskrit. Nichiren said that Namu was an Indian word. He didn't say it was a Sanskrit word. Now, the SGI, Nichiren Shoshu, Nichiren Shu, when they teach you about the Gohanzan, or the object of worship, which is written in Chinese and Pali, the word Namo is Pali, not Namu as the Japanese teach. What they do is that they want to slide Sanskrit into the Buddhist teachings. Nichiren spoke very little about Sanskrit, and when he did, he never supported Sanskrit. Now, in regards to Buddhist teachings, we outright call the Japanese sects out on their use of Sanskrit and how it is incorporated in Nichiren Buddhism. While Sanskrit Buddhist teachings is not inclusive of Buddhist history, of black history, culture, and science and literary evidence in the Pali Canon is inclusive of black history. Archaeological evidence put Buddhism in Africa 1,000 years before Buddhism made it to Japan. Look at the Aphrodite temple in Nubia, Sudan. We see the Lotus Sutra. We see the Lotus Sutra written by written by King Asoka and the Asoka edicts all over the world. And the language that King Asoka used, who was a black king, he used Karasi script. We African Americans or black people have a history and cultural connection to Shakyamuni Buddha in ancient India deeper and more passionate than Japanese people. The Japanese purposefully extricate the Naga people from their teachings of Buddhism. The Nagas were the original black people of India or indigenous Indians. Naga is commonly known as snake people. They are known in the Indus or native people. They are known as Dravidian. Dravidian and Naga are different names for the same people. In the Magadha history of the Buddha began with the Nagas. The founder of Magadha Empire was Shoshu Naga. The Magadha kingdom grew into an empire under King Bimbisara, who was a supporter of the Buddha Shakyamuni. The Nagas were black people. So we are clear. There were only two people in India during the ancient days, Indo-Aryans and Nagas. In the ancient days, Indo-Aryans and Nagas were one and the same people. Indo-Aryans in ancient India was a culture and not a race of white people. A group of Nagas in India reached a social status that allowed them to mingle with foreigners, that is, with another group of Indo-Aryans emerged. The Nagas, who were the Buddhists who came in opposition against the new set of Indo-Aryans, were regulated to being what is known as a Chandala or an untouchable. So that we are clear, ladies and gentlemen, there were never white people in India. The word Indo-Aryan, Aryan meant noble people. The same black people who were the Nagas and the Indo-Aryan, they all were black and they were not white people. When the Indo-Aryans, this new group of Indo-Aryans, began to associate with the foreigners, that is when the racism began. That is when one brother dominated another brother and they came up with this caste system. The new Indo-Aryans allowed the Nagas, who agreed that system, to be in the lower caste. Or they became what is called a Sutra. And the others who challenged the system were deemed as an outcast due to the power of the new Indo-Aryans. The northern Nagas or Indians abandoned their Tamil language or Pascript language and adopted Sanskrit. The southern Indian remained with their native Tamil language. The Japanese Nichiren Buddhist sects teach Mahayana Buddhism that sides with the Brahman and Indo-Aryan culture. The Japanese Indo-Aryan culture sphere is related only to a white Buddhist culture in history. While the Japanese relate to the white Buddhist culture in history, a white Buddhist culture in history never existed in ancient India. When we review the SGI, Nichiren Shoshu, and Nichiren Shu, you will find Japanese who teach a Buddhism that is white as opposed to right. The extrication of black history is a racist, revisionist history. The Lotus Sutra speaks about the Bodhisattvas of the earth, a social reformers, and not a Japanese elite. Nichiren Buddhism which will be, hey, in 20 years or so, 800 years old. The only social reformer from this Buddhism has been only Nichiren himself. The Japanese have not been social reformers. They have not fought for freedom, justice, and equality. In fact, when you look at the SGI and Nichiren Shoshu and Nichiren Shu in India, they side with the Brahmins. In 1991, I left the SGI when I found black people in Memphis speaking with Japanese accents, bowing, and losing their sense of cultural pride and history. Now, today, in the SGI, you have a sick system where the SGI black leaders are only women who do not have a clue about or practice or recognize black culture and history and struggle for human equality. There is a red flag in the SGI when you see a system that lacks heterosexual males. How can anyone stand with Nichiren Shoshu when they lack equality? They have no women or priests other than Japanese, while they preach or propagate a system of Japanese nationalism. When I wrote a letter to the African American Nichiren Shu priests, Bouquet Shonen, asking about their Nichiren Shu policy regarding black people, I was told that I was not welcome at Nichiren Shu meetings. When you read on the website of Nichiren Shu and you read about the Vedic culture and Nichiren Shu's stance on the Vedic cosmology and how they promote this erroneous system that science proves that didn't happen, like the Aryan invasion theory. Nichiren Shu's stance on this, you see that they have a racist stance. I say they promote not Nichiren Buddhism, but they promote Hindu Buddhism. Nichiren was a black or a Chandela, as he says in the Ghost Show. A true social reformer was like Dr. Martin Luther King. We are the proud black Buddhists, are Buddhist scholars of the earth. And in my song, I say we put you guys on alert because we are Buddhist scholars of the earth. And I am Anthony Elmore. Let's take them out. Fighting in the world for freedom, justice, and equality, we're the best suited. We are called the Proud Black Buddhists. We're going to put you guys on alert in the 15th chapter of the Sutra, we're the Buddhist scholars of the earth. Them giant suckers who trying to knock us. We are the Black Buddhist scholars. Dr. King, Malcolm X, and Nelson Mandela. The Black Buddhist scholars, the one that was stubborn and come from India. His name was Zachary Hill in Mecca. The old name for India is Eastern Ethiopia. From the land of India called Eastern Ethiopia, a great man called Shakyamuni Buddha. His great teacher called the Long-Term Sutra. The little sister teaches justice, freedom, and equality. We teach people how to be free. The teacher of the Sutra, we're the best suited. We call ourselves the Proud Black Buddhists. Come and tell you the Lotus Sutra. Come and tell you the Lotus Sutra. Come and tell you the Lotus Sutra. Come and tell you